Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to the policy and paperwork review for NAR changes. So for today, the point of today is basically to go back over everything that was discussed this week on I think it was on, what day was it? Was it Wednesday? Wednesday Higgins had, yeah, it was Wednesday, sorry. It's been a week, huh? Yeah, literally. On Wednesday, Higgins had a session going over all the policy and procedure changes. I have the presentation for us today, and we're just gonna go over everything again. I wanna make sure that if you guys have any questions, we could talk about it together. Obviously as a team. So as we go through, if you have any questions, either raise your hand. I would prefer not to use the chat, to be completely honest. I would rather everybody just raise their hand so we can just talk about it together. I don't want to linger too much on any question because there's a lot of slides to go through. The point of today really is to go over messaging to clients and scripts. We're going to do that next week, actually. Today is more for kind of like the technical, mechanical things of like what paperwork we need to be using, any questions you guys have about what is or is not acceptable to be posting around town, things like that. So without further ado, let's get started.
And can you pull everybody up onto the screen for just 1 sec?
Sure.
Because Krista, maybe take because these are really, really important, and I know everybody's busy and not everybody has time to come. But if we can, and I want to be able to see, I don't know why I can't see the grid. There we go. So just take attendance and just let's make sure that everybody who hasn't seen it looks at the recording and reviews it. And thank you to the people that do show up, because this is really important. That it has come to my attention, and there has been a request, particularly when there's something important that we're talking about. And I am not even, believe me, the last thing I want to do is be on the screen right now, because I have not been feeling good and I don't even want to be close to it. But it's really important for us. It's really hard to pay attention when we're not on screen, because there's too many other things that we can do. And even when I pretend that I'm on screen, if you're not on screen, you're not really able to. So it has been a request that people, especially when it's something like this, I mean, whenever possible to be on screen, like if you were going to a meeting and you weren't really there, like it's tempting to look at your phone or to be talking, and there's just a lot of important stuff that's going to be happening here. So it has been requested that people pop on screen. If you're driving, of course you can't, but if you're not on screen, it's hard to pay attention. So can people do that? Is there, and I know if you're driving, that's the one person that did it is the one person driving.
Unfortunately, my camera is not working, so that's the only reason I'm not on.
Okay, cool. And
my camera's not working either.
Okay. All right, if cameras aren't working, that's one thing, but just in general, I've done some research on when you're on screen and off screen. And especially when we have speakers or visitors or someone that is, imagine if you were trying to communicate with someone and all you had was 12 boxes. But when it's something really relevant, it's really important to be present. So that was the request made to me, and I 100% agree. It's just too easy to be distracted and check that one email and you miss some vital information, and then you stop watching because you missed it. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And thank you, Brian. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Carmen. And if anybody else can get on when you can, that's great. And have at it. Mariano, thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's jump in. Here we go. So, as you mentioned earlier, this is going to be a review of everything that we talked about on Wednesday with Higgins. We're using their presentation. If you guys saw the email from yesterday, there already has been some updates, so we're going to be reviewing those as well. As we go through, again, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. I would prefer not to use the chat since it's just us. I will make sure to obviously, say, hey, if I see, Chris has his hand up, what questions do you have? and we can kind of work it from there. So let's jump right in. This meeting will be recorded, obviously, and it is for us as well. And it is just for us. We will be reviewing practice changes and antitrust. We will be discussing our policies for listing and working with buyers, reviewing paperwork to use going forward and what important items you need to do to ensure your transactions. We will review how we are going to display BAC in our listing. We will review marketing BAC and the importance of buyer tours, and Higgins will be having follow-up calls next week on Monday and Wednesday, and we will have a follow-up next Friday going over scripts. So what has changed? As we know, offers of compensation effective August 17th, offers of cooperative compensation are prohibited on Realtor Association owned MLS per the new MLS policy. This includes all listing types, residential, commercial, rental, anything. Cannot post a link on MLS directly to a listing on broker site, which includes a cooperative agent commission. Offers of compensation remain an option off MLS, and consumers will continue to have choices regarding real estate services. So important things from this slide. So obviously, as we've been talking about a bunch, any BAC will be removed from the MLS effective August 16th. So it's going to be the 16th on our smart MLS. You cannot post a link to your listing, whether it's Higgins or Vanderblue, on the MLS. There is an alternative that we're going to talk about later, but the main point here is you cannot post a link to your direct listing on the MLS. Offers of compensation will remain an option off the MLS, and we're going to go over where you can do that, what portals you can put that on a little later on. So MLS sent out an in-depth guide. You guys all should have received it by email. It's a pretty long brochure, but it's honestly chock full of information. Leslie and I went over it together, and the one thing that they did do right, at least, is kind of just put the most important things on here. So if there's at any point, if you want to refer back, you have obviously this presentation, you have us in the office, and then you also have this guide as well. So basically this kind of just goes over what fields are going to be removed. And again, buyer compensation type, buyer agent compensation amount, dual variable rate. And we talked about that a little bit as well. Basically the dual variable rate speaks to if you have a agreement with your client to be receiving a different commission amount than what you agreed on if you brought in the buyer. So if you're on the listing side and you bring in a buyer, some agents will reduce their total listing price as basically an incentive, and that dual variable rate will be removed as well. You can no longer use the term bonus rate. Thank you, Chris. All right, everybody feeling good here so far?
Ooh.
Yes.
Okay, good. Frequently asked questions. Again, this is just a good one to go through. Where can I post the BAC if my seller is offering a BAC? The BAC cannot be anywhere within the MLS, including showing instructions, showing time, showing instructions, agent to agent remarks, public remarks, directions, photos, virtual tour, or any document that is uploaded to the MLS and accessible to other agents or buyers. So now, this is basically like your cheat sheet, right? This is all the places that BAC cannot be. And these are all the portals that are connected to the MLS. If the portal is not connected to the MLS, you're fine. You can go there. You can post it. You can do the whole thing. Before everybody jumped on, Chris had a question about what was posted on Facebook that I think Brian sent into the group chat about those 3% key tags. Technically speaking, those could be done because even though the key box, right, is you schedule the key box through the MLS, it is not on the MLS, right? You're not going to see the keys on the MLS. So there's no attachment that anybody would see that you're doing the 3% on the MLS.
So doesn't our website get its information from RMS?
It-
Isn't it at IDX?
Yes,
It's
so.
not shared with other brokers.
So all of our information does get processed from MLS to our website. However, we're going to be manually going in and adding in our commission amounts on each of your listings once they come on the market. So it's not feeding back, right? It's not feeding back into the MLS, it's feeding forward from the MLS.
Is it gonna be on the listing or is it
So
gonna
any
be?
website, that website can have the BAC.
Right.
Only our, so if we're putting it on our website, let's say, right, you go to realtor.com, it's not gonna be feeding there. It's only gonna be feeding on our website. So what you
Because
guys,
we can then move it out,
exactly,
but if
yes.
We had access to realtor.com.
You would be able to do that too, yes, 100%, right? Because so going on this kind of like train of thought of like, of the reason why they're saying that it can't be on the MLS and it can be everywhere else, essentially, except the MLS. The reason that is the case is because the anti-competition of it all on the MLS, there's multiple different companies putting their BACs on one portal. So what their claim is that creates anti-competition because other brokerages are seeing what other brokerages are doing in terms of compensation. If you're putting your BAC on your own website, you're not showing, it's not anti-competition because it's not other companies as well doing it on one site.
And it's public.
And it's public, yes,
I think the whole idea was it wasn't transparent to buyers. They couldn't see the BAC.
exactly, yes,
And so it was just industry specific.
right, yes, exactly. Everybody feel good here? So far, so good?
I have a question.
Yes.
What happens if it is on there? Is there a violation or it's taken down
On where?
on MLS?
Yes, there will, so as far as we understand, they will actually take down your listing. There has been certain verbiage that has stated that your listing will come down and you will be fined. And I would say, especially over the next 3 to 6 months, they're going to be on top of anything. So if somebody tries to sneak in like a 2.5 on a mug in one of your photos, or somebody tries to do something creative with like yeah, clearly I've been thinking about it. But all of those things, they're going to be very wary of, so I would not even try.
But they've been like that all along. They go through every listing, and if you're in violation on anything, square footage or anything, they are
On top of it, yes,
Yeah, this isn't the beginning of them, going through each listing.
yes.
Question. So say I have a listing, the agent's trying to find out what I'm offering up. Where are they gonna look? What's the easiest place for them, other than calling me?
Mhm.
How are they gonna, what are they going to be guided to do?
Yes, so, and we're gonna talk about this a little bit farther in as well. What we're gonna do is we're going to put, for more information, visit my profile link, and then it's going to hyperlink to
So
Vanderblue.
we can have a link.
So you cannot have a link to the listing, you could have the link to your agent profile, and that's what we're working on now.
So who's gonna put all of our listings on our profile page? We don't
Your
have access.
listings already go on your profile page,
Okay,
yes.
all right. And then.
Are you sure about that? Are you sure we can have a link on MLS to our
Yes.
profile page?
Yes, 100% we can. As of
For-
100% in parentheses, as of right now, we can.
But not to the
And
list.
just on the agent, or it's not for the agent remarks, not the public remarks.
It is going only, yes, only on the agent to agent remarks for more information, please visit my agent profile, be put. It cannot be put on the public side. It can only be put on the agent to agent side.
Okay, so when they go to, for example.
And we're gonna talk about this more, okay? I don't wanna just
I just
because
don't wanna forget my.
I'll write them down,
Okay.
like write them down so I don't forget, so you don't forget. Because this is important stuff, but I wanna make sure like we're covering everything as well. All right. Okay, so important notice, this is something that you guys have to take action on. Should active listing agreements entered into before the MLS policy changes go into effect, on August 17th be amended to address the settlement agreement's prohibition, oh my God, on offers of compensation being communicated on the MLS. If the listing agreement instructs the listing broker to make an offer of compensation without reference to an MLS, no change to the listing agreement is needed, as a listing broker can comply with that instruction without violating the MLS policy change. But if the listing agreement specifies that offers of compensation be made on an MLS, then the listing broker should work with the seller to amend the listing agreement before the MLS policy change is implemented. So what this says is, and as far as Leslie and I and everybody understands, there are versions of a listing agreement dated prior to 2020 that do have verbiage that says that the agent will be putting an offer of compensation on the MLS. If your listing agreement does have that in there, you have to amend your listing agreement to either remove it or issue a new one to your client. The reason why this is the case is because if your listing agreement does say that you are going to be displaying a BAC on the MLS and you are not displaying a BAC on the MLS, you are violating your listing agreement, which makes your listing agreement void. So everything about it is void just based on that one thing. So I would say, we really looked on .loop. Truthfully, I think we're okay. As in, I don't think that anybody's using something from prior 2020. However, for your own safety, I would definitely go back and just check any listings that you have signed right now. Check when the date of the listing agreement was. It's on the bottom right corner. You'll see it should say 6/20, or I think the most recent one prior to like right now, I think was in March. So it's a 3/24. Check that just to make sure, because if it is, again, MLS is going to be looking at these and they're going to be seeing if there's any violations that need to be given out.
And if you have any old paperwork at home that you
Throw it out.
pull out of your folders, throw it out.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I mean, most of our listings as a team that are active now or under contract or in some form other than closed, those agreements have been signed within the last few months, in theory. I don't know of anybody that has a listing that's, 6+ months old. So we should be okay if we're using the forms right from .loop under Vanderblue, we should be fine.
Exactly, yes. If you are
Okay.
using the forms on .loop under Vanderblue, you should be fine. However, we know, Leslie mentioned it the other day, there is somebody who's using a form from literally 1998, and it's just because they have it saved somewhere, so they keep using it. So just in case you're somebody who keeps it, let's say, saved to your desktop, and you just keep going back and using the same one over and over again, just be mindful of that. I don't want you guys to have any violations coming your way. Everybody feel good about this one? Okay. So can buyers and buyer brokers rely on offer of compensation that was on an MLS prior to the effective date of the MLS changes? If the sales contract is executed before the MLS policy change, the buyer broker should be able to rely upon the offer of compensation, even if closing occurs after the date of the policy change. So this means that if you have a sales contract right now, right, you should be able to rely on the offer of compensation that was on the MLS. However, because I like to err on the side of caution, if you are on the buyer side, if you are on the listing side, if you have a contract out right now, if you are submitting an offer right now, my best suggestion to make sure that you are as safe as possible is to either get the seller represented form signed or the broker to broker signed. The last thing that I would want to happen is in 3 weeks from now, when you're closing and it's past the 17th, for there to be some sort of kerfuffle over your commission that is extremely important to you, and obviously the reason why we're all here.
But it's in the contract, right?
You have to make sure it's in the contract. because if it's not explicitly mentioned in the
Oh, what the
contract,
percentages
what your
are.
percentages are, I would still get a broker to broker sign, just to make sure.
Even though we have the MLS, we always submit the MLS sheet showing the compensation as
Yes.
a part of the contract. That's part of the contract.
The MLS sheet is typically included in the contract. However, if there is not a provision for brokers to be compensated based on MLS, I would still get the broker to broker just to ensure that. Because if there's not a direct line in the contract that states something referring to the MLS as the point of where your compensation was logged and coming from, I wouldn't trust it.
So
I would
we
make
need
sure that you have
writing,
something.
So that's with the seller. agent.
Yes, so on our side, when we're representing the seller, we're gonna use the represented seller form. And then if you're on the buyer side, you can always request the represented seller form. I personally like that one more, even on the buyer side. But if like the brokerage or their company is not requiring that, you can't force them to use it, but the broker to broker would be sufficient as well. The reason why, and we'll go into this more too, the reason why as a company, we're not preferring to use the broker to broker on our end is because you become liable for the commission instead of the seller being liable for the commission.
So I'm sorry, I'm confused now. Which one? I have a contract that's closing September 30th.
Are you on the buy side or the sell
Buy
side?
side.
So you would use the broker to broker.
Broker.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
I just used the
Okay.
broker to broker. I put an offer in yesterday on a rental. They were only offering $400, and I put it in for 50. I put my own in. I put 50% of 1 month's rent. I haven't got any pushback yet, but just letting you know, like that's what I'm using it in our favor. So we'll see how that all goes.
Definitely gonna have to.
I wouldn't maybe make that a practice. I think maybe because it's a rental, it's something that you can do. And we'll talk about how to handle inputting commissions and handling that when we get to the offer to purchase form. Broker to broker, professional services agreement might be required by other brokerage, like we mentioned. So basically, I think we covered this entire slide. Everybody feel good here? So far, so good? Thank you, Chris, for the cheers. I appreciate it tremendously.
Awesome.
All right. How did that even happen?
Getting seasick.
What just happened?
No, it looks like you went to the other day.
Is this Evelyn Wood?
Okay, there we go. Important notice, take action. So we have posted on the Higgins has posted on the agent dashboard under company resources, the Higgins Group antitrust policy compliance. They're going to be emailing this to each of you to read and sign and return by email to compliance.higginsgroup@gmail. So basically, as a part of this whole thing, everybody has to sign the antitrust compliance form. It's nothing crazy. It's just for you guys. It's for company policy. Nothing crazy here. I have access to compliance.higginsgroup.com. So when they've said like submit any questions there, or when we get to the point about listing agreements and all that fun stuff, I'm in there also. So if you ever need me to look in there for something, just let me know. All right. Listing compensation for all Higgins Group listings. So if a seller would like their listing to pay out less than 4%, with 2% paid to Higgins Group and 2% paid to buyer's brokerage at closing, then company policy requires broker approval before the exclusive agreement can be signed. So basically what they're saying is, if you are negotiating terms for an exclusive agreement on the listing side, and let's say your client happens to not want to do 2% paying out, that is going to require brokerage approval. So you're going to have to talk to, as of what this says, Rick or Rich, about the ability to do less than that. I think that the intention behind that is because as a company, they do not want anybody to be taking no BACs, right? I think on your end as agents, I don't think that you guys want to be that person either. I think that you want to make sure that in this industry, reputation matters, and that you're staying with making sure that people on the other side feel like they can still work with you. I think something that we talked about a lot when it comes to this is if there is pushback from a seller about, well, all this is going on, why do I have to pay 2%? Why don't we do 1%? The messaging should always go back to not the buyer's agent, but the buyer. You're going to be reducing the amount of buyers that are going to feel comfortable coming to your home because they're not going to be able to bring their agent. Because their agent, they want to have paid and they need the representation. Representation is very, very important. Buyers get that. But there's all this talk about percentages, and buyers also cannot afford to pay the extra 1%, to pay the extra 0.5%, to pay the full 2%. They're just not going to be able to show up to your house, and you're going to get a significant amount of less traffic to your house, which is going to mean that it's going to take longer to sell. You're going to have to do price reductions, and people are going to be submitting all kinds of crazy things because we're not paying out on the buyer brokerage side.
Can we say also, if you're not offering it out, they're going to put it into the offer anyway, in a way that's going to be a concession to the seller.
Yeah.
So either way, it's going to be part of, it's going to be baked into the price.
Absolutely, 100%. And going along those lines too, when you're talking about pricing suggestions, right? We always price suggest keeping the full 4% in mind. So if you are going to do anything less than that, if we're not going to be paying out for that, then we're going to have to reduce your price even more. And I don't think that that's something that you want to really
And all
do.
the comps are based
Right.
on that it was,
Exactly.
that commission is part of the price.
Right,
So
right.
they're really not comps unless you're
If you-
removing that.
Exactly, 100%. I completely agree. I completely agree. All right, everybody feels good here. Rental BAC should continue to be full month's rent. That is split between landlord agent and tenant agent. Consensus on rental BACs seems like that, rentals are very flexible and fluid, and things seem to not be really spotlighted on what's going to go on with rentals. So I think that everybody's kind of in this same mind frame that it will continue to be a full month's rent split. And then maybe what would happen is, like in New York, right? I know we mentioned this before. Typically, the tenant is responsible in New York for paying the tenant agent. So that's something that we might see more of, and it's something that we already have seen. So if that maybe leans one way, not as shocking or surprising. I think that people would be more amenable for paying out the tenant side rather than, obviously on the buy side, since it's such a larger bill to have.
When we list a rental on Zillow, can we put the BAC?
If you list a rental on Zillow, can you put the
Because
BAC?
it's not the MLS.
If Zillow, so here's what I've heard about Zillow specifically. Zillow is a brokerage. So technically speaking, if they're a brokerage in your state, they cannot put BACs on anybody else's listing other than the agents that are in their state. I don't believe Zillow is a brokerage in Connecticut. So I do believe that we do have the ability to put our BACs on Zillow. That's.
I would triple check that. I would definitely check into that to make sure if in our state we can do it on Zillow.
Yes, so as far as I've understood so far, Zillow hasn't made any official announcements about it. So I'm just working off of basically what has been discussed so far. In comparison to, let's say, Realtor.com isn't a brokerage. So there should not be an issue with putting a BAC. However, they're not going to put the field there for us to utilize if it's not allowed. It's going to either be there or it's going to be removed. So if it's there, then we would be able to utilize it. If it's not there, then you guys can't do it. You can't add it into the description or anything like that. It would be a field that they'll provide for you to use.
On Zillow.
On Zillow. On any of those like external syndication sites.
But not Realtor.com, because that feeds from the.
On any of the external syndication sites like Realtor, Zillow, Homes.com, HomeSnap, Apartments.com, all those guys, if they know legally that they are allowed to put it on, then they will have that. If it's not legally allowed to put it on, they will not have
Then
it.
every agent will just go there to see what,
Right.
right? Or no, they
So,
can't see. I don't.
Down
get
in
it.
the
Is it on
city,
back end,
in
or-
by comparison in the city, right, there's not a real MLS that people use. People use Street Easy that's owned by Zillow as essentially their MLS. All compensation is put on there. So that should, in as far as we understand right now, it should be allowed for another syndication site to put BACs on there. However, it's evolving, it's growing, and we're gonna see. If there is the ability, if there's a field there that they're gonna allow you to do that, then you can. But if there's no field, I would not get creative, try going into the realtor.com backend and ask them to edit like to your listing description, BAC 2%. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go as far as doing that at this point with so much influx.
It sounds like we're gonna be looking at each other's websites to get
Yes.
BAC.
100%.
Right.
As of right now, that is what basically our intentions are, is to send everybody to our website. And I think that that's what a lot of people are gonna be adopting as well.
Well, we can't talk to them about that, right? Because that's
You can,
collusion.
oh,
Talking to other
oh,
agents
well,
about-
so, yeah, so.
Can you say is your BAC on your website?
Yes, you can say, oh, my company's doing this, so you should do this too. You can do that. But if you're saying to them, oh, my BAC is on my website, like you go there, that's no problem at all. You're free to discuss where to find your BAC. What they're saying that you're not able to do is say, my company's doing this, and I think that your company should do this, and here's the reason why your company should do this. That's why they were it was very important to them to make sure that they were admitting every single person so that nobody from outside of the brokerages come onto this. And the same thing for us too, like this stays in-house with us so that we're all talking to each other about these kind of things, and it's not any representation of what we feel like other people should be doing. Chris, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, when we're having that discussion with other agents on our listings, I think it's important to say, my client or my seller is offering and not I'm offering or our brokerage is offering.
Right. Absolutely. I think when it goes to that kind of conversation about what your seller is offering, and then also when you get, because you are going to get the conversation of when you're at the marketing presentation, they say, oh, well, what have you been doing these days? What are people around town? It always goes back to, well, my clients have wanted me to, my sellers have wanted me to do this, right? It's not, oh, well, this is what I do, or brokerage does this. And then, kind of following that along, and we're going to get into kind of like what those conversations look like next week, but using kind of this slide as an example, to start off the conversation, my clients have wanted me to do this, right? And then when it gets to the point of, well, I'll give you 2% and I only want to pay out 1%. That's when the conversation of what brokerage policy is and what are the reasons why, you're going to be, cutting your audience down, traffic's going to be slower, your BAC is not going to get paid, you're going to have to bake it in anyway. All those things then come in at that time.
What if they say, sure, I'll pay out, I'm gonna give you 3%. I'll give you 3% total. You can split it however you want.
So what would you say? How are you going to split the 3%?
I'm gonna give you 3%. If you wanna offer out 2%, that's your choice. Then how do I have the conversation like, I'm not working?
Are you going to be able to effectively, right, but are you going to be able to effectively do all the marketing, handle the costs, do everything that you need to do, open houses, signage, all this stuff for only 1%? No. So then it still doesn't work, because then your traffic is still going to be very much shrunk down, because I'm not going to be able to do everything that I do for all of my listings.
But I don't even, we should, I think that conversation, not saying that you're not going to be able to, I think we'll have a separate conversation on how we ask them for the commission, but our fees are 2.5%. And from that, we add on to what we want to offer the buyer commission, or our fee is 3%, or our fee is 2%. But we start with our fee and add on. Like, we don't take away from what they give us and take our percentage. Our fee is what our fee is, and then we add on for the buyer commission.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if they say they're going to do 3%, say, well, then that's only 0.5% left. Are you sure you want to do that? Or you could take 2% depending, But I think if they're looking at that, you know, they're splitting it, we have to start with what we're charging and add on to that.
Right. Perfect. Awesome. All right, everybody feel good here? All good? Alrighty, Higgins Group paperwork. So on last Friday, they issued a directive that we will only be using the CTR forms for all transactions. We are currently reviewing the new Smart MLS forms. Literally, it's just so amazing. On Friday, we went through all the CTRs, everything looked great. And then on Monday afternoon at 4:30, we got all the Smart MLS documents in. It was perfect timing. But we still, I think we should still stand by using CTR because Smart MLS forms still have not been reviewed. What we have been hearing from you guys is obviously what you typically have used from Smart MLS that people still want to use are is the standard form contract. That one we did review, and that one you can start using. We knew that that was important because in comparison to the CTR version of the standard form, it does not have anything in for compensation, and the Smart MLS version does. So if you are in need when submitting an offer to use the standard form contract, I would almost prefer you to use the Smart MLS version at this point because it has in provisions about commission already baked into there.
Really?
It is not in .loop. You would have to pull it from Smart MLS. We're as a company, we're not adding in the Smart MLS forms to .loop until Smart MLS does it. Smart MLS has the ability to add in all their documents to .loop, and we're waiting for them to do it to make sure that they didn't fuck anything up, basically. So as of right now, everything CTR, you still have access to the Higgins purchase agreement. That document does need a provision about commission, which we'll talk about in the next slide. This Smart MLS version of standard form contract, which you guys have been typically using, you can start using the new version of it. It's been reviewed, it looks good, and there's a provision about compensation in there.
That's the 4-page contract you're talking about?
That's the 4-page contract, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's the one we should be using.
Smart MLS standard form contract 4-page, you can still use. The new updated version, so to access the new updated version, you have to download it from the MLS. In the transaction desk or in the form section, it'll be there.
It won't be in .loop.
Use the CTR forms.
For everything else, except 2 things, right? Everything is CTR except 2 things.
Can you show them where to access it in that?
Yes, you should be able to find it. So, sorry, Brian, what did you say?
It's not in .loop.
It is not in .loop.
We're not going to
So-
put the new one in .loop.
Not as of right now. So everything CTR that you're going to use is currently in .loop under Connecticut Association of Realtors. The way to access that in .loop is you go down, you go to templates, scroll down to Connecticut Association of Realtors. Once you click it, it's going to ask you for your NERDS, your NRDS. You get that from the MLS. If you need help finding it, let me know.
You only have to do that once.
Why can't we download it and put it in .loop?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Not right now, because we're waiting for Smart MLS to upload everything to .loop. So the same way that CTR has uploaded all their documents and will be continuously refreshing them with the newest versions, Smart MLS is supposed to be doing the same. We're waiting for them to do it to make sure that they've reviewed everything, everything is proper as it should be before uploading anything to the MLS. To .loop. So everything that we should be using is CTR except 2 forms. The purchase agreement, that's Higgins, and that's still in .loop. And the Smart MLS standard form contract, which you can use if you need. The new version you can access on Smart MLS. It has a provision for commission compensation, and that's why we're saying it's okay to use as of right now.
Does everybody know where to find the NERDS thing? Because you told me yesterday, I had no idea.
If you need me to help you find the NERDS thing, I'm happy to do so. I'm not gonna go over that right now.
So you said, okay, I understand those 2 things, but on the Higgins purchase agreement, we need to add
A line about compensation, which we'll go over on like the next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, no, it's okay. All right, does that make sense? Everybody feel good here? So CTR, everything except purchase agreement and standard form contract. Purchase agreement can be Higgins, Standard Ford contract can be smart MLS. Going once, going twice, sold. Old paperwork, get rid of the old paperwork that you have saved on your computer or in print. It is time for a fresh start. We will not accept paperwork that is out of date. If you have something saved on your desktop, if you have something saved on your printed at your house, just throw it out. I threw out everything that we have here in your seller's guide, buyer's guide. I literally went through every single one and threw them out. We are not printing new ones as of right now. So when you go grab a seller's guide, buyer's guide, your printed forms will not be in there. I'm giving it like another 2 weeks. Make sure that there's no changes or provisions that are necessary, and then we'll start printing them out for you guys. The last thing that I want to do is have something printed that you guys are relying on, and it's the wrong thing for you to be using. So the best thing to do is to use .loop when you're sending out your stuff, because that we know is being fed from CTR to .loop with the most updated versions of these documents.
So if
I
they
have a
want to,
question.
maybe just print that and give it to them.
Yes, exactly.
Are any of the disclosures changing, or all those are staying the same in terms of property and lead?
As far as we've seen, property, lead, mold, foundation, agency, and fair housing, those haven't changed. Those have not changed as far as we've seen.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody feel good here? All right, so Higgins Group paperwork, required documents needed when signing a listing. So as you guys know, you need the exclusive right to sell, and that's going to be from CTR. You have your represented seller compensation agreement with buyer, brokerage, rider. I literally could not think of a shorter name for this. So when I say represented seller agreement, that's what I'm referring to. The represented seller compensation agreement with buyer, brokerage, rider is what we're using in place of the broker to broker agreement to confirm commission. So when you're going to get your listing signed, these are all of the required documents that you need when signing a listing. Your exclusive right to represent, your represented seller compensation agreement. That's going to make sure that your seller understands what they're paying out to a buyer, broker. You need the real estate disclosure notice to prospective parties with signature. So that is something that we've actually talked about as a team. I'm not sure if you guys remember, but when we saw the real estate disclosure notice and that kind of came back into our world, we talked about adding a signature line on there because we thought it didn't make sense that the client would just have to print their name or write their name. And Higgins is obviously agreeing with that. And their policy now moving forward is that your client has to sign that. So in .loop, there is the version with the signature. And if you are happen to use, for whatever reason, stumbling upon the version that does not have a signature, please make sure to add the signature on it. On the listing side, as we previously discussed as well, the fair housing notice is required. You have the electronic signature document, which has been standard and what we've been using, and then your disclosures, right? Property, lead, mold, foundation, all that fun stuff. Chris.
And all 9 of these documents are in .loop and ready for us to use today.
Yes, all 9 of these documents are in .loop and ready for you guys to use today. So the CTR documents are all in the Connecticut Association of Realtors section of the templates, and then the other ones you can still find on the Higgins form library. When Higgins sent out the email last week about the changes that they did and the additions they did to .loop, I sent out another email kind of under that saying that we removed the Vanderblue forms folders, and that is going to stay for right now while all these forms are changing. We're going to rely on the Higgins library and the Connecticut Association of Realtor sections of .loop. And all of these are there. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.
Thank God for you.
All of these documents, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later as well, all these documents are required to be in .loop to get your BAC displayed on higginsgroup.com and vandergroup.com. If we do not have exclusive right to sell and represented seller compensation agreement, we will not add your BAC on higginsgroup.com or vandergroup.com. Nothing else to say there.
Crickets.
Crickets.
We get it.
CTR exclusive right to sell agreement. So this is an example of the current CTR exclusive right to sell agreement, and how it needs to be broken up when it comes to the fees. It is as we've been doing, but just to make sure, obviously this is an example, this is not a representation of what the brokerage or we feel like you should be asking your clients to pay. So with that disclaimer, compensation to broker, seller agrees to pay a broker a service fee of 5%. So this is the total commission being offered by seller. It is not what you're getting, it is the total commission. 5% of the sales price, or this would be the dollar amount. So we put NA because we like to work off of position, off of percentages. Down below, listing broker compensation to buyer brokers. This is the section that you're going to say what you're paying out to the buyer broker. So first things first, seller does or does not authorize listing broker to offer compensation. In this example, they have authorized. If seller does authorize listing broker to offer compensation to buyer brokers, the listing broker shall offer buyer broker from the above service fee, which is 5, an amount equal to 2.5% of sales price or NA. So that would be for the dollar sign. So we're saying out of the 5%, the buyer's broker is getting 2.5%. This is the commission being offered to seller, by seller to buyer broker. Okay. In this additional compensation provisions, this section can be used to describe a variable commission structure. So like we talked about earlier, if you're making a deal with your client that it's 5%, 2.5% out to buyer broker, but if I secure the buyer, I'll do it for 4%. That's what you could put in the additional compensation provisions. It is not, you do not have to do this. If you're not looking to do a variable commission structure, you do not need to do that. And it is not allowed to do that. You can still do a variable commission structure. You just can't post about it on the MLS. Okay. Chris.
This form is shared obviously between ourselves and our clients, posted on the MLS. Who else has access to this?
This form is shared between us and our clients, posted on the MLS under private, because this is something that the document that the MLS has to review, and then it's put on .loop. Other than that, nobody sees it. Nobody should see it, and nobody does see it.
Okay, I'm asking because obviously now we're in a position to disclose BAC, but we're not gonna be put in a position to disclose total commission.
Correct, 100%. You have to disclose BAC. You do not have to disclose your total commission to anybody.
Yep.
Feels good. Everybody feel good here? Any questions? All good. Thank you for the rousing cheer. Oh no, it's happening again.
Has this been shared with us, these slides? Like, do you want to make copies? I realize I did take screenshots as it was happening, but I missed it.
This PowerPoint is accessible on the Higgins dashboard. Yes. Real estate disclosure notice. So we've been using this for a very long time. This should not be something new to you guys. If it is, I'll start crying right now. Real estate disclosure notice. This is the agency disclosure in other terms. It's a required form for all transactions. This form should be on display at all listings. We include it in your open house packets. You should have them at showings. You should have them with you. You should have them at all times, because as we've discussed, if you are in substantial contact, that is the formal term. If you are in substantial contact with a party, whether prospective party or unrepresented person, about real estate, and you're a licensed real estate agent, they have to sign this. This is something that has been required for a very long time now, and this is something that everybody has a very strong, renewed interest in. So I would please make sure that you are having people sign this at your public open houses, or if you are showing somebody for the first time that you're meeting. Higgins Group requires that this form must be signed by client, so we know it has been received, okay? So you'll see presented date, to and by, and on behalf of, but there is no, on the regular version, there's no signature line. And that's, I literally cannot tell you why they wouldn't need to sign this, but as a company policy, we are making sure that it's getting signed. So there is a formal acknowledgement from the client there.
2 questions about that.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but number one, what if there are 2 parties? Does it have to be signed by both? or
Yes,
just-
it does,
So husband and wife both have to sign?
100%.
Okay, because I think there was only one line for.
Whoever is going on, basically whoever's going on the offer, or whoever's going on, whoever you're meeting with, has to sign this. So you can either do 2 separate forms, or you can put them both on the same form, and then just add another signature box.
Okay, and the other question, a lot of times people are in a hurry and they'll say, tell me in a nutshell, what does this say? I mean, that's a lot for somebody to read.
Yeah,
Can you give us at some point?
absolutely.
Maybe on
Yeah.
what we were asking them to sign?
100%. This is not a contract, so it's nothing binding. All this does is tell you, as an unrepresented person, what I can do as a real estate agent. It goes over the types of agency relationships. It says what it means to be a single agent, what it means to be a dual agent. It also talks about fair housing and how, as a realtor, I am working under a certain code of ethics that makes sure that I am not discriminating against protected classes or all that fun stuff. It is nothing scary. It is nothing binding. It is nothing about what I'm going to do for you. This does not mean that I have even your fiduciary. All it means is that you're now in discussions with a real estate agent about real estate. That's all it does. Nothing crazy at all, truthfully. Like, out of all the things that have been going on and like all the forms that we have, this is quite literally the least threatening of them all. So it's a lot, but it's very easy to kind of like go through and talk to them about. Okay.
It's basically the same disclosure that we've always had.
There's, as far as we've seen, nothing has changed about this disclosure. So this is the same disclosure that you've been using all this time. The only thing that we're reiterating is this, again, very strong renewed interest in making sure that this is signed at first substantial contact. Okay?
So someone was saying about maybe having one at our open houses, like in a plastic sleeve, in a public place, so everyone is, we're basically saying, you know.
Displaying
There it
it
is.
isn't, so Higgins has talked about displaying it. Displaying it does not do anything for you because it is not there filling it out. If you want to have it on display so that you can like easily grab it and show them that you have it on display so that it's like maybe like welcoming and whatever, that's fine. But displaying it is not going to be like a catch-all. You have to have them fill it out.
Even at an open house?
Primarily at an open house. Because that's a random person walking off the street, coming into you unrepresented, has no idea what's going on, and you need to have them do something with this form by the time that they leave.
But it's only if you're discussing, sorry.
If
It's
they're
only
going
if
to an
you're
open house,
discussing-
you're not talking to them about their grocery list. You're talking to them about real estate.
But I thought it was one specific thing that if we were talking about that, then they had to be.
Real estate. If they're coming to your open house, you're going to be talking to them about real estate. If you say to them, welcome to 123 Main Street,
Yeah.
that's real estate.
Even if they have an agent, if they're represented?
If they have an agent, you are completely fine. This is an unrepresented or prospective party, okay?
And how are people gonna know if we don't do this? Really?
If you're submitting an offer for them, they'll know, right?
Well, then we'll have buyers.
If a buyer, so put it this way, if you're, so,
If I say something wrong and they like report me or something.
there's gonna be testers out now. Like, there's 100% gonna be testers out. When you're submitting your stuff for closing, we're gonna talk about this a little bit later on, but MLS is including that guide there is a line that says who is responsible for policing that exclusive agreements are being signed. And the NAR has tasked the MLS for doing so. If I were a betting man, what I would think that they're going to do, they're going to check for the exclusive being signed at contract signing, when things go CTS, and when things close. And I'll leave it at that. Okay, Lori Critchell, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can force anyone to sign anything at an open house. I mean, I think this is gonna, if they're unrepresented buyers, I mean, people don't like to sign things, okay? So especially with someone they don't know. I understand that, you know, it's agency disclosure, but just because they're coming into your open house doesn't mean you're gonna have any kind of a relationship with them. And I just can't see you saying you've got to sign this. I mean, I just don't see how that's gonna work. People don't even know you and you're telling them they have to sign something? What? And you're gonna,
So,
you know, it
I
just,
wanna
doesn't work.
reframe this, right? Because this is not what we're saying is required, right? And it's not truthfully up to you, up to any of us to say what we think should or should not be signed, right? It's not our call, it's not our job to make those calls. So what we're doing is we're relaying the information over to you that has been given to us about this disclosure. This disclosure, before any of this, was supposed to already be signed. So if you are not having them sign this, right, legally speaking, you are not doing the right thing from months ago, months and
I
months and
mean,
months
we were
ago.
having people sign them when we were working with them, doing showings, doing offers, but
that's
not just
fine.
somebody coming into an open house.
And that's fine. My responsibility and the brokerage's responsibility is to make sure that we're communicating to you guys what is legally required for you guys to be doing when you're at public open houses and when you're at showings. And as we understand, this document should be signed by the time at first substantial contact with an unrepresented or prospective party. So
I mean, maybe they're
that.
gonna want a copy of it too if they're signing it. Are we gonna, you know, how are we gonna give them a copy?
Take a picture.
Scan it, take a picture of it and send it over to them.
And then you'll get their email address.
And then you'll get their email address.
This isn't that scary.
Yes.
It's right in the top, it says this is not a contract.
Exactly. Again, this is
But I'm being told that if it's an open house and we have our sign up that says we are representing the seller, that these are not required for an unrepresented buyer to sign to go to an open house. I mean, it's good if we do it because then we can get their email address, but
everything that we've read, everything that we've seen, this document has not changed and the policies around this document have not changed because of NAR. This document has always needed to be signed when you're having a discussion with a prospective party or unrepresented person at any time. If you meet somebody for coffee and you're talking to them about real estate and you're trying to work with them as a client, this is supposed to be signed, technically speaking, regardless of who you're representing. If you're representing, as I think as Ellen asked, if a buyer comes into an open house and they have an agent, they do not need to sign this because they are a represented person. And you're not trying to facilitate any sort of agency relationship with them. But if that person is not represented, then and is a prospective party, you do need to have this signed. So I want to jump. I'm sorry, Colleen, I know has had her hand up for a while, so I want to make sure that I get to her.
I just want to make sure I understand it. So for when I've started doing the open houses, what I do is I put this real estate disclosure in a plexi and I have a pile of them right where they sign in. Because I don't have people sign in until the end. So of course I've had discussions about it because I'm representing the seller. So that way it's there if they want it. And then if they don't want to sign it, we can just put their name and said would not sign. Is that correct?
So that's perfect until the part of the not signature part. And I'm saying this not as a person who I understand what you guys are saying. I'm saying this as a person who is just trying to communicate what I understand is the legal implications of this. So I want to make that very clear distinction for you guys, if you can read between the lines. Having a plexiglass, and having them, a stack of them, is literally the perfect setup. If you want to walk them around the house, kind of build rapport with them, and then get them to the point of signature, again, I think that's actually the best way to do it, because by the end of your tour, you should have enough communication, enough rapport with them, that getting them to sign something like this, that is very non-threatening, that is very specifically not a contract or binding, should be easier to do than if you do it right when they walk in the door. At the point where you say that if they don't sign it, I lie that they don't sign it, I understand. Legally, I don't know if that's possible to clear us, but do I think that anybody's gonna be knocking down any doors over this document? No, I do not. I don't
So
think that
when I
anybody's gonna be.
first got this document, there was no signature line. We just had to write their name.
Right.
And we've added this, I don't know, did we as a brokerage add the signature line, or did the state add the
Brokerage.
signature line?
The brokerage added the signature line. So they're
Right.
asking,
Okay, okay.
as a formal kind of acknowledgement, they're asking for the people to sign it so they know what they're actually, signing. But again, do I think that there's a world where people are like, where's your disclosure notice? I don't know.
So
But-
I just think we have to have the conversation too on, as Colleen points out, the time to ask for this. Because if they only have to sign if they're not represented, then some of them will say they're represented just so they don't have to sign. And now we've lost the opportunity to even try to woo them into signing, because they've already lied to us about being represented. So if they know going in, okay, are you represented or unrepresented? Because if you're not represented, you have to sign this. Oh no, I have representation, and they could just think about anybody they've ever used before. And that's I think gonna happen, because people don't like to sign things. So if you give them an out on why they don't have to sign, they'll take it. And then when you go to have them sign in, they're like, they already told you they were represented. So they'll either say, yes, I am. You know what I mean? I think this should not be when they first walk in. This should be after you meet them. You have the open house, as I have heard from reliable sources, that this is going to be, if you're doing an open house, this is not going to be required, because it is clear when someone walks in the door that you have to have that sign that says, I am representing the owner. And I don't know if that's true, but that's what I'm being told is going to happen. But it just gave me food for thought, that if we're making people sign this right when they walk in, if they're unrepresented, many of them will say, oh, well, I have someone, I need to sign that. And then when you get them to sign in, they've already told you they are, so what are you going to do? So just be careful with when you ask. I personally think it should be at the very end, when you're signing them in, and are you working with someone, and you've already met them, and then you have these over by the sign-in sheets. Because technically, if we ever got in trouble for that, say, listen, I'm doing my job as a salesperson and I am not representing them. It states clearly that I'm not representing them right here on this sign. And then they signed. So I think it's really important, because it could deter the relationship that we create with them if we ask too soon.
Julie, do we have a sign that states what you're talking about? Like, I'm representing the seller? Did I miss that?
Yes, we do have an open house sign. It should be in our folders, but maybe they don't, maybe it just says welcome to our open house, but
Yeah, it just says welcome to our open house.
we should have ones in there that we put in front that says, welcome to our open house. We are representing the seller of this property. And there's like a whole little verbiage that we had on those signs, and it was always at the very front.
The signs do say that.
You say that.
Really?
Really?
So I would not bring this up until they sign in and you've already created a relationship with them, because my backup is the fact that we did disclose that, and we disclosed it before they left and they signed it. I think it's a useless bullshit piece of paper, and it's so broken, but if we have to sign it.
I wouldn't say that. I don't think we should say
There it is.
Just legally speaking.
Well, I mean,
Yay.
I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. I'm not saying we should break rules. I'm saying that if we're gonna get it signed, I wouldn't get it signed in the beginning. Because you're putting that person on the spot and you're starting the relationship with, oh my God, now they're just trying to get me to sign something. You can't, I think doing it the way we always have these over by, don't ask for them to sign anything until you show them the house, walk them through the house, and then say, okay, so are you currently represented? Because we have a lot of properties I'd like to tell you about. And then they say, oh no, I'm not represented. Get them to want to work with you before they tell you whether they're represented or not.
And what
You know,
happens?
And I just want to be mindful, I don't want to stay on this too much longer, because we have a lot more to go. I know Melissa you had your hand up, and Christina, you've also had a question as well. I'm
I'm
sorry.
just saying, what happens when you have 2, 3 parties coming in at the same time and
Yeah.
one of them inevitably, leaves without you talking to them?
And that's okay. And things like that are going to happen. I think that by first substantial contact, like that whole experience is considered your first substantial contact. So by no means do I think that, it's like nobody's even going to know that you didn't get them to sign it right when they walk in the door, right? It could be at the end of the tour. That's completely fine. And that's not illegal to do something like that. It's more so that if we are grossly neglecting this document, that's when a situation is going to come up. Melissa, did you still have a question? I know your hand was up before.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a question. I was just gonna share to Lori's note, like about getting people to sign this. Just what's been successful for me is right when they sign in, I just say, oh, can I have you guys sign in? And if you're not represented or don't have an agent that you're working with in this area, you just sign here. And then I just direct them there. And I haven't had any issues. Like no one's been like, oh, I don't sign. They usually say, oh yeah, I have an agent. And then they sign in the regular book and put their agent's name.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We've been focused on open house, but what about a buyer that we meet for the first time, like a realtor.com?
Right.
We meet him at a property and there might be another agent there and it's the first time you've met them. Do I need to get this signed before I tour the property with them?
No, not before you tour the property with them, because again, the whole showing experience is considered for substantial contact. So by no means do you have to be like, hey, before we walk into the house, you have to sign this.
Okay.
It's about the whole process. So if you're going to be with them for an hour, you're going to be with them for the whole day. By all means, you can take your time in getting this signed during that first substantial event. You do not need to do I can't say a word to you before you sign this. Like that's not what anybody is suggesting happens. It's more so during that first event that you have this signed by the end of it. And again, out of all the things that are required out of us, this document, I don't think that is.
Let's not focus on it.
Let's not focus on it, okay?
Let's move on.
Christine, what do you got? I see you have your hand
hi
raised.
Nicole, I'm just on the Zoom.
Hi,
Hi.
multitasking here, driving, so I don't know if I can stay with the phone. Hi, but question, going back to representing the seller at the open house, if I'm doing an open house like for Lori's,
Oh no.
am I representing the seller?
Sorry, can't hear you, Christine.
Phone home.
I think she was saying if she's doing an open house and she's not representing the seller.
Right. I think that's what she's saying too. But
Or am I
I feel
just?
like she's still,
Can you?
so I'm nervous. All right, well, in Colleen.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, yes, now we can hear you, sorry. Nope, I'm not sure. All right, well, for Colleen's
Yeah,
question.
Colleen was right. So if I'm doing an open house, say for Colin's listing, am I representing the seller because I'm part of the Vanderbilt team? Neutral.
So not because you're not because you're on the Vanderbilt team, but because you're on the same brokerage. In our listing agreements, it talks about Higgins Group. So since we're all Higgins Group agents, you're more than fine to still use that because you're as part of the same brokerage. That's more than fine.
So I'm still representing in that case.
You're still representing the owner by doing an open house, and you're yes, yep.
No, not the list.
Yes, yep.
Okay. Great, thank you.
No problem, thank you. Chris, what you got?
So this could be a stupid question, but I've heard the term first substantial contact about 30 times in the last week.
Yeah.
Does that first substantial contact have to be in person?
If you are having a Zoom call with the intention of talking about real estate, then that is considered first substantial contact. If you are doing a FaceTime and you're showing a property or at an open house, you're talking to them about real estate and it is a FaceTime call and the purpose of the call is real estate, that is considered first substantial contact.
But not a regular phone call.
Not a regular phone call. If you just happen, if you're like, I talk to leads all the time, right? Like when we have somebody calling in and they're calling in about a property, blah, 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 that's not, that is not considered for substantial contact. It gets to the point of where you're setting an intention for this meeting to be specifically about real estate. And there is the agreement that this meeting is about real estate. That's when the first substantial contact comes into play.
Okay, and our welcome to open house signs state, as a prospective purchaser, you should know that the listing broker or salesperson are agents of the seller and they owe their fiduciary duties to the seller.
Perfect.
That's what they currently state.
I appreciate it. All right, let's keep it moving. Represented seller compensation agreement with buyer brokerage rider. So this form is mandatory for all sellers offering a BAC. We should share this with agents to show that they will be paid once they have an accepted offer or before contract signing. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that just to make sure that this is as clear as possible. We should share this with agents once they have an accepted offer or before contract signing to show that they will be paid at closing. Just wanted to make that clear. This form provides transparency and honesty between seller and brokers. The broker-to-broker agreement holds us liable to pay a commission at closing, not the seller. And if you are representing the buyer, the selling brokerage will provide one of these forms, which is sufficient for your commission to be secure. So the reason why, as a brokerage, we have opted to use the represented seller compensation agreement versus the broker-to-broker is because this puts the liability and the responsibility on the seller to pay the fee. If you are using the broker-to-broker agreement, the brokerage and therefore you have the onus to pay. Not saying that in any world people are going to try to skirt out on paying or anything like that, but it's a matter of liability. On the opposite end, if you're on the buying side, that broker or that brokerage might not be using this represented seller compensation form. Is there a world where you can ask them, hey, would you mind being able to get this signed? Sure, but you might not want to do that. You might want to just keep it moving and just get the broker-to-broker agreement, because what you can say is my brokerage is requiring at least one of these forms to be signed by the time that my client signs contract. So at accepted offer, by accepted offer, you should already know what they're paying. But between accepted offer and before contract signing, you need one of these two forms in your possession fully executed, whether it's between the seller and the buyer, or if it's the broker to broker. On the broker,
So you would accept the broker to broker.
on the buying side. If you are on the listing side, we will not accept the broker to broker.
So on the listing side, you need the.
Represented seller compensation agreement with buyer brokerage rider.
And are we sharing?
For sure, the RSCAWBBR.
Question, are we sharing this with the attorneys? How, is this important for them to know for the commission checks to be cut?
Absolutely. You should definitely share this with the attorneys. Yes.
It should be like that full package we send over to them.
Yes, 100%. And with this being said, right, because we have this form, it's important to have it and it protects you. Like we were mentioning earlier about the standard form contract and the Higgins purchase agreement, there still should be verbiage that alludes to this form as well in your offer and in your contract so that you're as protected as possible. I am very, I feel very strongly about erring on the side of caution when it comes to your commissions. I hope that you would feel the same way as well. So I would think that you guys would want to do that. All right, everybody feel good about this form?
I have a feeling Rick is gonna be very busy in the next 6 months.
Yes, because he's gonna need to sign it, and I was gonna mention that as well. For the broker to broker agreement, it does say that the designated broker needs to sign it. The only two people that are designated brokers are Rick and Rich Higgins. Leslie is currently working on how that process is going to look. Thankfully, we have a week to figure it out. In this next week, still get these signed, still get the broker to broker signed, still get the represented seller agreement signed. However, if you're sending out an offer and you don't have Rick's signature on it, between now and next week, feel free to do so. We're gonna work on how that process is gonna look, whether it's gonna go to compliance, whether you're gonna add into a dot loop or something of that sort.
Yeah, like we do these things in the middle of the night sometimes.
Right. So I would say, so Lorelei actually had an offer yesterday that we were working on. So what she did is, she was obviously on the buy side, so she filled out the broker to broker. She signed it herself underneath where Rick would sign, and then she sent it out. And that's completely fine to do so as of right now. Once the 17th happens, we're gonna have a very clear understanding of how the process will look to get Rick signed. But for now, you sign it and then send it out and then keep it moving, because we still have another week to go. Okay? And we're, again, erring on the side of caution. I don't want you guys to ever be put in a position where, because of paperwork, you're not getting paid. So, directions to post a listing, BAC on higginsgroup.com or vanderblue.com. All managers will review the MLS daily for new and coming soon listings. If we have completed paperwork, .loop transaction desk email for the listing, we will enter the BAC percentage on the listing. It is the agent's responsibility. I cannot stress this enough. It is the agent's responsibility to email compliance.higginsgroup@gmail.com to let them know that your documents are in .loop. If you are going to wait for Leslie or for Diane or for whoever to look at the MLS for the entire day to look for your listing to come on the market, you are so sorely mistaken. Make sure that when you have all your listing documents in .loop and it has gone live, that you immediately email compliance.higginsgroup@gmail to make sure that they are aware that your listing is live and that they are going to be adding the BAC on Higgins Group. At the time that they add it to Higgins Group, I will be adding it to vanderblue.com.
So it's just an email, you don't have to send them all the paperwork.
Nope, it doesn't have to be anything
Email,
formal.
This is what we're offering.
Exactly. All you have to do.
Address.
Yes. All you have to do is add the .loop in the subject line and say, hi, 123 Main Street is now active. All of my documents are in .loop. They have access to your .loop. I have access to your .loop. So you don't have to do anything more than that.
And this is starting today with going forward, not previous.
This is starting for any new listing that comes on after the 16th.
Got it. Yep.
All right, everybody feel good here?
And so really today, because it's gonna be on after the 16th.
Yeah, if you have something that you're signing today and then it's gonna go on, email them when it's live on the market. They can't do anything before it goes live. So once the paperwork is in and it is live on the market, then email compliance.higginsgroup.com@gmail.
So Mariano, so if a listing is live now, the BAC is going to be taken off of MLS. So do we do this for listings that are live now?
I have to ask Leslie how she wants that handled. I think that she is going to manually do that at this point. That's what was discussed, that she's not gonna have everybody email about listings that are currently active. So great question. I have a 90% answer for you. But as the week goes on, I'll be able to clear that up. And especially.
And do we have to have conversations with all of our sellers now? Explaining that their agreements, their 5% agreements I mean, can we just do what we're doing? And if we're keeping 3 in, tell people we're offering 2 out? Or we have to go back to them and say, listen, the laws have changed and you can offer whatever you want to the buyer? Or should we just not say that? I mean, what I'll probably say, if anybody asks, is, listen, they've changed the rules, but we're still offering the 2% out. That's in your best interest. It always has been. And do you know what I'm saying?
It would, yes. So on your listing agreement, it should, on the listing agreement that you have signed with your client, it should have the breakdown of what you're keeping and what's being paid out. If it doesn't, we should amend that. And also, if you have an active listing right now and you don't have any offers, or you're expecting an offer, you need to get the represented seller agreement signed. And that will basically take care of that conversation for you. Because on that document, you're going to be very clearly stating what you're going to be paying out on the buyer side. So essentially, any listing that you have right now, that conversation will be naturally happening because you need to get the represented seller's form signed.
Okay.
All right. Everybody feel good here? All right. Higgins Group paperwork, required documents when signing a buyer. Required documents when signing a buyer. CTR, exclusive right to represent agreement. CTR, real estate disclosure notice to prospective parties with signature and electronic signature. So this is just when you're signing them up. Buyers, obviously, there's much less paperwork than a listing because you don't have all the disclosures and all that fun stuff. On the CTR, exclusive right to represent buyer agreement, the following statement must be added to protect your ability to receive the full commission amount. Oh, no. Okay, I'm so glad that we got here. As of this morning, per Ken Bruder, who Higgins Group now has on retainer, this verbiage, you cannot add. You cannot add this. Buyer agrees that buyer brokerage can be paid based off the commission amount provided by seller if it exceeds the amount agreed to within this document. We have it on the next slide as the example. This cannot be added. Okay? Can I get a hoopla just to make sure? So on here in the example, we have if buyer purchasing real estate, broker professional service fee shall be calculated as follows. $NA or 2% of the purchase price of the property. Based on this agreement and based on what it says for number 4, and we already took it out here where that line would have been added. We talked a lot about 4 and 5. 4 is staying. Broker may not receive compensation from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to herein. You cannot add a provision in here that says that you can get paid more than what the listing is providing. However, there is an addendum that you can add to this to make sure that you can get paid. So if your buyer exclusive says 2% and the listing is offering out 2.5%, you cannot add anything into this agreement. However, there is an addendum that you can add that adjusts your commission to 2.5%. So when you're going through this with your client, because this is really important to do now, going through all these documents, when you're going through this with your client and you're saying that you're going to get paid 2%, you have to let them know there are circumstances where people will pay out 2.5%, and that is at no additional cost to you. It does not mean that you're not saving money or anything like that. However, there's a world where if you do not express this to them and they realize that you're getting paid 2.5% and you don't talk to them about this point and you do get them to sign the addendum at 2.5%, they can come back to you and they can say, well, you just costed me 0.5%. I could have paid 0.5 less because I only wanted to pay you 2, and you never told me about this. So if you're going for 2%, if you're going for 2.5%, you still should have the conversation with your client from this point, saying that there is a possibility that it gets paid more than this. Obviously, it's going to come from the seller, is going to be a part of our negotiations. Everything's always negotiable, and it has nothing to do with the strength of your offer.
No, what if they say no? I'm not gonna sign it.
then unfortunately you can't get paid. Yeah. But there shouldn't be a world, there shouldn't be a world where they say no if you're effectively communicating your value proposition and you're telling them from the very beginning.
So what if they say, but when I go, how do I know if that's getting paid by the seller? And I just signed something agreeing to pay you 2%. I mean,
On this document, it does say that the seller is majority responsible for the commission. So if there is a world where they're signing for 2%, right? And the seller is paying 2.5%, all those things should be discussed with them from the very beginning. And you should say to them as well, when you're submitting the offer, like let's say you're signing for 2%, the seller is paying out 2.5%. When you're submitting the offer for them, they should be aware that the commission on this is 2.5%.
so my question is, are they signing this only when we're making an offer? Or is this signed way, like when I first start working with them and they haven't seen anything and they don't know what they're is a buyer gonna agree to pay me 2%, not knowing
So
what that's gonna be at the end?
legally speaking, as what I have understood is that the exclusive right to represent buyer agreement has been the case, similar to the real estate disclosure notice, that's supposed to be signed before you show them any properties.
Right.
This is supposed to be signed before you show them any properties. The MLS has said that they have been tasked by the NAR to police this. Their words were police this. If I were to guess when they would be checking for when you got this signed would be when something goes CTS and when something closes. So if a date needs to be said on a document,
This has to be dated before your offer is what you're saying.
Correct.
I didn't say that.
I did, yes.
Yeah, I get that.
Can it be a range, Mariano? Could it be like 2 to 3% or 2 to 2.5%?
It cannot
That's
be.
what-
So we received, from the in-depth guide and then from Ken Gruder, there were provisions added that specifically say, and the reason why originally we thought that we could add that line, it would be okay. But the provisions that they added specifically make mention to any open end or range. It can't be anything open-ended or range. It has to be a specific number. So that's why,
I mean, it's such a broken system. This is so ridiculous.
yeah.
And I could see putting no less than 2% and no more than 3%. But this is where, guys, we're basically working on contingency, just like an attorney. Like, you don't, all right, you're hiring me to work for you. I don't get paid. I'm paid on a contingency basis. And we get 2.5%, but that can be negotiated up or down, depending on what it is you. So what we're gonna have to do is, just like we do with our listings, you get them to sign it, and then you get them to sign a new one with a new date. So you're gonna have to get them to sign this and say you're 2 to 3 on ours or whatever. And I know I'm not supposed to say this out loud because we're being recorded, but I think the rule is so broken that because we are working on a contingency if they're paying us, we would accept 2. If the broker is paying us, we would expect 2.5, because the contingency, I like the word contingency because they're not paying, it's not a commission. It's a contingency fee based on a finalized transaction, just like an attorney. If you don't get the house, if you don't win the case, you don't pay us. If you don't get the house, you don't pay us. And the percentage is dependent on what they're offering. So I think what Mariano was kind of alluding to, but can't say because we're being recorded and we'll probably maybe have to delete this, but stating that if you're paying us, it will be 2%, but we're going to negotiate that in. We won't ask for more than 2%, but if there is an offer, we're going to, for hire, there'll be a new form that they fill out. And
Yeah, and you can have, and having that conversation with your client is absolutely possible. So when you're filling this out, it has to be a specific number. So it has to be 2 or 2.5 or 3 or 17, whatever you want it to be. The specific number can be there. And then when you're going over this with your client, you absolutely can let them know there is a world where the seller is going to be paying out more than what I provided here. At that time, I'm going to add an addendum to this contract that will just allow me the ability to do that. And of course, because I have your best interest, I'm going to let you know that before you sign the contract, what I'm supposed to be getting paid. Because at that time, I'm going to need you to sign the addendum as well.
So you can't add this paragraph that we talked about
Nope.
before.
You are not allowed, as of this morning, you are not allowed.
One less thing
Scratch
you
it
have to
out.
do. I heard that.
So what if we did our fee is 2.5%? And we had our own addendum that stated, this is, and make it clear, this is negotiable. And we are doing case by case, but this is a standard form and can be negotiated, just like all fees can be negotiated. So this 2.5% is a starting point that it can be negotiated down to 2% depending on what the client is offering.
I would say for this too, honestly, just to like, if you guys can really, if you put this at 2.5%, the likelihood that you're getting more than 2.5% is almost none, right? So if you have 2.5%, you're basically covered. It's just in the circumstances where if you need to put less than 2.5%, where you're going to have to talk to them and really go through the process of potentially getting more than 2. But if you're at 2.5, like really, you should be in a good place. All right, everybody feel good here? I know we're running way over and I appreciate everybody's time, so we can kind of run through the next bit faster, but I want to make sure, yeah, this is obviously very important. So transaction documents, as we've been saying this whole time, for any offer to purchase agreement, or real estate contract you are submitting, it is required to add the following verbiage to a note section, additional comment, or other section. Negotiated broker compensation to be set based on the attached CTR represented seller compensation agreement with buyer brokerage writer, or the broker to broker compensation agreement. So for the Higgins purchase agreement or the CTR purchase agreement, this is required. As of yesterday, when we reviewed the Smart MLS standard form contract, they do have a provision in there that basically covers what your commission percentage is. At the point where you're submitting these documents, obviously call me and we can go over them together, just to make sure that you're putting the right verbiage in there as well. And this is what it looks like. So on the Higgins Group purchase agreement, under other, you just add negotiated broker compensation to be set based on the attached blah, 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 whichever the compensation agreement is.
Can we add that on the forms automatically on Loop, or do we have to type those in?
You have to type that in, because we're not going to know if you're going to be using the represented seller form or the broker to broker. So you would just have to add that into the other section of the form. All right, so required documents needed when closing a listing. These documents must be completed and submitted to generate a commission statement and for payment. This is basically just a review. Nothing crazy has changed here. It's just a recap. Exclusive right to sell, represented seller compensation agreement, real estate disclosure notice, fair housing notice, electronic signature. If the signed disclosures for property-led mold foundation, real estate contracts, either from attorney, CTR, or Smart MLS, and Higgins Group binder checklist. Obviously, as the Vanderboot team, we do not use the Higgins Group binder checklist, so you don't need to use it either. Everybody feel good there? That's pretty straightforward. This is the same thing for the buyer side. Right to represent buyer agreement is needed. Disclosure notice for prospective parties, electronic signature, your represented seller compensation agreement or broker to broker compensation agreement, signed disclosures, real estate contract, and then again, no need for binder checklist because we have the closing form. All good here too? Rentals, so exclusive right to lease from TTR, broker to broker from TTR, real estate disclosure notice from TTR, fair housing, electronic signature, signed disclosure, lease agreement, and then again, just closing form. Nothing crazy here. And then it's the same thing for the tenant side, tenant agreement. So exclusive right to represent tenant agreement, real estate disclosure, electronic signature, broker to broker, all the fun stuff. Marketing the BAC. So listing brokers may advertise an offer of cooperative compensation in any way off of the MLS. So on your listing on Higgins Group and vanderblue.com, we went over how to do that. They have talked about adding it to sign riders, must follow company standards, cannot say broker protected. If you're planning on adding something that says about compensation to your sign riders, please see me about it. We want to make sure that the verbiage is correct. We want to make sure that you're not putting yourself liable for anything. Brokers protected, when you're putting it on a brokerage sign, means that the broker is making sure that the broker is protected. That means that you are saying that you are guaranteeing them a commission. We don't want to do that. So there's things that people have done, like seller loves buyer brokers or seller paying BAC. In my viewpoint, I think that adding that gives unneeded attention to BAC. When you think about so far, when you're interacting with your clients on both the selling and buying side, your compensation should be the thing that's on the top of everybody's mind. Of course, we need to disclose and discuss with them compensation, but there shouldn't be a constant reminder that we're getting paid. No industry does that. So I don't think that sign riders are going to become a thing that a lot of people do. I know some people have done them, but that's my viewpoint on that. And that's how.
Oh, sorry. It could be a separate question, but it just made me think of this when I was reading this. When someone does showing time, we can email anybody who goes through showing time. We can even do automatic emails, right? Through showing time, confirming.
Not through showing time.
So we can't say through showing time that there's a BAC because it's through MLS. But as soon as we get the request, we can text or email the agent saying what we're offering.
Absolutely. You can email, text, phone call anybody individually and let them know. You cannot send it through showing time or anything that is attached to the MLS.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. All good, Julie?
Yeah.
On social media posts for broker tour, just listed, public open houses, it can be put on all those things. I know during Wednesday's meeting, Leslie discussed about not putting it on public open house posts. I think that they changed their mind and they are going to do that. It wasn't a matter of that if you could or could not, it was more so about what the content was and what would be the reasoning to put the BAC on public open house tour, open house posts. I don't think that we should. I think that if it's for a broker tour or just listed, that's when it's important. But again, the constant reminder of payment really isn't doing anything beneficial. I think that agents who want to find out what the BAC are going to go to you for it, or they're going to go to the website. They're not going to check our social media for it.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be reminding the public that we're only doing this for payment. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Exactly.
It's not.
I completely agree. I think that
You
on the
should email the agents separately. It's just, should be just a conversation between agents. It shouldn't involve the public at all.
absolutely, I completely agree.
May I ask a
Yeah,
question?
absolutely.
Say, being that I'm a social media person, say an agent asks, hey, no, I do want it on a post. Would you prefer it to be in the caption or in the post itself?
Only on the caption. I would not put it on the post itself. I would only, and for you guys too, when you're creating your own post, I would not put it in the actual photo image thing, or video, whatever. I would just put it at the very end of your caption, BAC 2%, BAC 2.5%. I really would not utilize your social media because it should be public facing and about getting more buyers. I wouldn't make that the focal point of your social media. You know, obviously you want to talk about it, you want to mention it, absolutely. But, you know, for broker tours, great, that is an appropriate time to be discussing BAC. Just listed, you want to add it to the bottom because it's the first time it's going out there and you're posting on your own social media and you know that you have brokers there, perfectly fine. But public open houses or repeats of just listed, things like that, I don't really think that it's necessary.
Put it at broker opens.
Yes, and yeah, that will have this signed up too, yeah. Colleen, yeah, I see you have your hand raised.
I was just thinking brokers opens may become way more popular now. What are your thoughts of that? Because that's really when you can discuss, especially, I mean, they're big and, you know, they're not bigger than the smaller towns, but
No.
what are your thoughts?
1,000,000%. I think that broker tours, I think that we're gonna start seeing them done more than even one time for a property. I think that every time a new property comes on the market, 100% a broker tour. I think that every time you do a price change, you should do a broker tour as well, because those are going to be signals to the people that we're still gonna be working with, that you're not only welcoming them, but you're doing right by them. Right, again, we said like
So
representation.
yeah, so we should start thinking more like, whereas we would only do one on a Thursday in Fairfield, we should really look at those because those may become huge. Am I right
Absolutely.
thinking that?
I completely agree with you. Broker tours, broker open house tours are going to be some of the most important places to now do business. Absolutely, because I can even see brokers wanting to go to the broker tours to negotiate. I would think that they are going to use
And
that.
hear what everybody else is doing.
Right, hear what everybody else is doing, see what other people are saying, even negotiate just between brokers at tours, so they can have those conversations and not feel like, their client's right next to them.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that.
I
And
just find it interesting because I do a business in a lot of the smaller towns which don't have brokers opens. So or they rarely have brokers open. So now I'm thinking this may just grow. So that I'm trying to just plan ahead.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that doing broker tours right when the property comes on the market, 100%. Even doing a follow-up if traffic is good or traffic's bad, I would still do another broker tour. And then whenever you have a price adjustment, I would do a broker tour as well, because it's going to be another signal for them to come in and take a look at the property. And I think that using that broker tour to really showcase not only yourself but the house is going to be just as important as a public open house tour. Completely agree with you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you think we can put something in the house like that stays on with all of our marketing materials that might say something like seller happily, or seller will be paying a BAC to all buyers agents? So that when people come in, they see that and they know that, okay, I don't have to worry about paying my agent because the seller's paying the agent. And we just leave it there as part of our marketing materials.
I think we have that on our next slide. That's a perfect transition. Great. Just very quickly before we go to the next slide too, disclaimer for all posts should be, so we very carefully said this, disclaimer for all posts should be, if you want to put a disclaimer, by law, commissions are negotiable. It is not required, you do not need to put that, but by law, commissions are negotiable is something that if you want to err on the side of cautious, I would add that maybe to underneath your hashtags, or on a comment that after you do, right after you post the thing.
I mean, if they're not making us do it, why would we?
Right, if you want to err on the side of caution, you can. You don't
And
have.
I know that this is a different conversation, but Mariano, you might know this because certain companies are doing this, and I actually kind of think it's a good idea. And I can talk to Rick about it, but I want to get your take on it first. EXP and other companies around the country are not doing, they're not offering the buyer's broker commission. They are not co-broking with other companies. That said, the sellers are very aware that they're going to offer a commission to the buyer's broker directly, not through us, has nothing to do with what we're getting. And I think the reason this works in our favor is because we say our fees are 3%. There are going to be, so on our commission, it says 3%. In order for you to expect the showings that you need to get, buyer's agents are going to request a commission. I would seriously consider offering out X but it's directly to the buyer's agent commission. It's totally separate from ours. And I think that's what we should do as a company. And I think it's cleaner. It has nothing to do with them. Then they're going to be like, well, they want 2% and I'm giving you 2.5%. So I want you to, it has nothing to do with what you're offering them. Our listing broker fee is 3%. That's what's on our document. As your representative, buyer's agents are going to request a commission. And in order for you to get as many showings, I would like to let buyers know that you as a seller will be offering up to 2% or whatever it is when they request that information. But that is going to be directly aligned with the offer. We will review it as the offer. Our listing agreement is this, and we will review the offers and see once we net out this buyer agent is looking for 1.5%. This buyer agent is looking for 2%. We review all the offers and then we decide which is the best net for you. I think that's the cleanest way to do it. Then we're not on the hook for anybody else. EXP has made a big thing about it, and I was poo-pooing it big time at first, but our commissions are at stake if we don't do that, because we are basically stating what we are getting and they can decide what they get. And then we're not on the hook for anything. We're not in harm's way. We can't be sued. And, you know, I'm not the broker, so I'm not getting sued, but it's going to be our name on it. And I just want to see how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, I think that that's something that we can kind of like maybe talk about at like a round table to discuss maybe strategy. I think at this point, I wouldn't want to buck anything that is not, you know, what we've been doing, just to make sure that the legal implications were allowed to do things like that. Especially for like broker policy and certain things that we talked about. So I think that's something that we should, you know, discuss and maybe pick
Well, the
up.
only reason I'm bringing it up is I'm going to talk to Rick about it. And it has to be talked about very soon. And if you guys don't think it's a great idea, I want to hear about it before I go to Rick.
I would be concerned about not being able to say that we're paying out a certain percentage.
But we
like
would be able to say that we are. It's the seller that's paying, it's just not us.
Our
Seller-
right now, I think this is, are we saying, because we're not necessarily like paying out the percentage, right?
If it's on our listing agreement, yes, we are. If we are taking 5% as a commission, then and saying that 2.5 goes to them and 1.5 goes to. Anyway, I'll talk to Rick. And we can keep moving forward.
Okay.
I just wanted your opinion if anybody has heard anything about that and what the reaction is, because it has to be done relatively quickly if we're as we start to go down this road.
Jill, I just think that might hurt us on the buy side, because then it's really separating both sides. And when we have a buyer, if we're going into a listing like that or showing houses like that, and the listing agent saying, listen, I got my butt covered, but you're on your own, I think it
No,
doesn't breathe.
we'd still be saying what the seller is offering them. It's just up to the it's the same exact thing.
Really the same thing. It's just, I mean, because the attorneys are still going to cut 2 separate checks like they always have. That's still going to happen regardless. Right?
Okay.
On the way that the listing agreement is broken down, it says that the total commission is 5, but that out of the 5, the certain amount is being paid to the buyer's broker. So I think it would not be different than the way that it's currently broken down is. I think what EXP was trying, from what I understand, that EXP said that they were going to do is that they're no longer paying out any BACs, but they're allowing, what they're going to tell their sellers to do is pay out seller concessions as commission. So they're trying to change it in that way and saying like, oh no, we're not doing any broker compensation, but in actuality, they're still doing it. They're just calling it a seller's concession instead. And they're thinking that way they're skirting their liability, but in actuality, they're just getting it paid out in a different way. And they sound like they're not paying buyer brokers when they're doing that. But
And how are they planning to communicate that?
Exactly, and that's going to be another.
The same way that we would be. The
Yeah.
same exact way that we would be. But
Okay.
it doesn't matter. We'll keep moving on because it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I just wanted your opinion on it. But
Okay, let me make sure that I'm on the right page here. All right, so, right on perfect time, as Flo was mentioning. Broker open houses, everyone should be doing broker open houses. These are critical for buyer brokerage relationships and BAC. When brokers sign in or leave a business card, we have this foldover. So welcome to our broker open house. Our seller is offering a BAC. Ask for details. If we want, there's multiple versions that have been created. Some have the actual BAC on it. Some just say our seller is offering a BAC. It's completely up to your discretion on whether or not you want to put it out there. My suggestion would be for broker open house tours, if you want to put the fold over that says welcome to our broker open house tour with the percentage, I would do that for broker open house tours. But if you're planning on leaving it there for welcome to our public open house or welcome to 123 Main Street, our seller is offering a BAC, I would not put the actual percentage. If you're planning on leaving it there long-standing, I would just have our seller is offering a BAC, ask for details. If you're planning on putting it for a broker open house, I would see why people would want to put the actual percentage there, so it's just physically present and you don't have to worry about it. Either way, like, you know, and then going towards like liability and blah, blah, blah. We added very small at the bottom, all commissions are negotiable. Ding. You know, the Orbit commercial and it's like ding. That's what it is. Everybody feel good here?
When you host an open house, especially when you host a broker's open house, make sure you wear your Vanderblue and make sure everybody knows up front. Very important. Communication.
Very funny, Chris.
So this is a generic template. Welcome to our open house. Our seller is offering BC, ask for details, just as another example. Social media posts, emails to agent, social media posts or emails to agent for broker's tour can contain a BAC for your listing. For public posts, we feel that it should be displayed as. For more information on this is incorrect actually, because this is for this whole section is like a little bit off. On agent to agent remarks and on public, we should not be saying for more information on BAC. It should be for more information on this listing, or for more information, comma, visit my profile at blah, 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 right? Like you don't want to be saying for more information on BAC. You don't want to keep referring back to it. If you're putting it on your post, you can just do BAC 2%. You don't have to go crazy with all of this. This is really for the agent to agent remarks. You want to put for more information, visit my profile at vanderblue.com, and then it's going to be hyperlinked. What we're concurrently working on doing on the MLS, there's actually a section that will be hyperlinked that goes directly to your profile. Right now, it does not work because the MLS is stupid. We are working on getting it fixed, okay? That's the best way I can say it. Please note, you cannot link directly to your listing in the MLS and cannot mention BAC. Smart MLS option, we are working on options for an easy display. This is exactly what I just mentioned. So as wanting to move things forward, let's keep it moving. NAR has tasked the MLS with enforcement on policing the requirement that an agent obtain the buyer representation agreement before showing. As we mentioned, if there is a world where I would see how this could be possible, it would be during CTS and at closing. Please note you cannot link directly to your listing in the MLS or say in the agent to agent remarks, see my website for compensation information. What you can say is, for more information, visit my profile. I think that you're going to be seeing a lot of that, and I think it's going to be a clear signal to a lot of agents that have brains what you're trying to do.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Directions to post a listing BC on Higgins Group. We went over this already, so this is just a repeat. How it's going to look on higginsgroup.com and Vanderblue for right now. Your listing description, it'll be shown, and at the very end, it's going to say BAC 2%, BAC 2.5%, whatever it actually is going to be. Next step, so Monday, August 12th at 1 p.m., we're going to be holding a session with Ken Gruder. This is with Higgins. They're gonna be reviewing any questions that people had from the last section, as well as updating anything new, which obviously you guys already know that there's some new stuff. Wednesday, August 14th from 10 to 12, we're gonna be holding a session with Terry Hastings. We will review talking points for sellers and buyers, and of course, updates. As the Vanderblue team, we're also going to be holding, next week's Blue U is going to be discussing everything that we talked about this week. So we're just going to be doing another recap just like we did today. We will be posting meetings. This presentation is posted on the Higgins Agent dashboard. As always, we'll be sending out this recording for everybody to review. And please remember, this is still a moving target and changes will continue until a final settlement in November. Nicole, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. This might be something that needs to be sidebarred, but just a quick question about if you've gotten any information in regards to how this will apply to New York City and Rebney, since Rebney is not part of the MLS and they do their own thing. Are they going to follow all the same protocol?
For the most part, yes. So everything in terms of policy and legality and all that fun stuff remains the same. The major difference in between New York is specifically for the HDAR, the Hudson Gateway MLS, is that they are allowing a box for pre-closing concessions, where a certain dollar amount can be added that would be able to be translated to how much people are paying out for a commission. However, if there is a commission, if somebody would want to have done that, my suggestion would be actually to not do that, because then you're locking in a specific number and not a percentage. And as we know, things are constantly negotiated and goes above asking, under asking, all that fun stuff. So for the most part, like I would say 99% of it is the same in New York as it is in Connecticut.
Okay, but not necessarily in the city. So I have to do some digging there.
So you are a part of the MLS because we signed you up for Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors.
You did?
You
no.
did.
No, I'm on the Rebney, not Hagar.
You're on OLR, so you're a part of the MLS. We'll talk about this off, but you are an MLS member, Nicole, because you're all part of OLR.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about this. All right. Okay. Thank you.
You call me, okay? My people call your people, you call me, okay?
Sounds fabulous. Will do.
Thank you. All right, that's everything for today, guys. Any questions? Any more questions that we could go over together? Absolutely, happy to help. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? Feeling good? Feeling foggy from all this?
Thanks to Mariano.
All right,
Thank you, Mariano.
Leslie, he's put a lot of time into this.
Yeah.
Oh, time.
A lot of time.
It has been
So,
time.
thank you.
Thank you guys for staying with us for 2 hours.
Thank you so much, Mariano, for all the work you put into this.
Thank you. All right, I will see you guys in the office. We'll do another one next week, and this recording will go out so you guys can all have it. Please don't share it with anybody else.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.